Good evening. Thank you. All right, this is the meeting of the Community Preservation Committee of Wednesday, June 30th, 2021. We are meeting by Zoom, as we have been since March of 2020. Let me confirm, first of all, that each of the members of the committee can hear me. I will call your name, respond in the affirmative. Mr. Albert.
I am here.
And Mr. Barnes.
Here.
Okay, I'd see that Artie Crocker has not joined us, so he's absent, at least for now. Bob Dermody.
Here.
And Laura Dorfman is also not with us on the panel, so we'll mark her absent, at least for now. Chris Gersel is also absent, but he's en route, is what we've learned. Penny Kirk.
Here.
And Rick Zimbone.
Here.
And Peter Pingator present. Let's get our staff members on the record. So first, Cecilia Simchek.
Here.
And Kristen Wright.
Here.
Okay. All right. As I noted, this is an open meeting of the Community Preservation Committee, and we're meeting pursuant to the governor's emergency order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency of the COVID-19 virus. The executive orders, I believe, have now been morphed into some statutory language. So let's just, for ease of use, I'll continue to refer to them as emergency orders because I think that they're set to expire at some point in 2022. We've been advised and directed to suspend public gatherings. The governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of the public are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. All members of the public body, that is. The order allows us to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment or participation. As I stated, we're convening pursuant to, we're convening by Zoom application. Access to it can be reached through the agenda that's been posted online. Note that the meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer with anything that you don't want to broadcast generally to the public. All the meeting materials that you need should have been provided to you, and that consists of a one-page agenda. And we'll just continue with our usual ground rules, which is we'll make sure that each of us are identified on the record before we speak. I'll call you as chair. All votes are going to be by roll call. Okay. Let's see. Chairman's updates. Why don't I can I just reserve those until the end of the meeting, if you will. And I guess what I'll say generally is we have three things that we want to kind of push along during the course of the summer. But the major reason why we decided to meet over the next 3 months has to do with the Emery Grover project. And there is a working group that includes 2 members of the CPC that's addressing financial issues and planning issues around capital needs for the school department, which includes not only an administration building, which is Emery Grover and would implicate CPC funds, but also the replacement of 2 schools, Mitchell School and the Pollard School. And this is kind of part of a long-term capital plan committee. But there's an anticipation that the school committee will be back before this board in October, or excuse me, in time for an October from CPC in connection with the design and rehab of Emory Grove.
Anybody else have?
So we want it to be ready for.
Yes.
Freezing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're freezing on us again.
Sorry.
Peter, you keep freezing up. It's happened about 4 times now.
Ironically enough.
Okay. All right, let me see what I can do. I may have to change locations and plug into a LAN. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, I think just let me know immediately if it becomes a problem. I'll unplug and I'll move to another location in my house. Okay. But the purpose of our meeting for the next 3 months has to do primarily
Just happened again.
There you go. Goodbye.
Time to move.
addressing being prepared for the Emory Grove. I'll sign off for a minute. I'll be back. Okay.
Bye. We'll talk about you.
I move, we adjourn.
Well, Paul, I think we can all,
Favor?
Paul, I think we can all say that we're glad to have served with you. And we appreciate all your input over the past few years. And we hate to see you go, but we know your time's up.
Well, thank you, Rick. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul.
But I'm still on the planning board and this year I'm the chair, so I will come back to haunt you when I need to.
That's perfectly acceptable.
Everybody seen the scaffolding on the church that we funded?
No, they started work.
Not First Baptist, but the other one. The
Yeah.
Your
First
parents.
parish.
First Parish. Thank you, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good to see. Maybe there should be a big banner, Joe, like you've suggested even on the scaffolding, with a giant, like, this is funded by your CPC dollars.
Yep. Your CPC dollars at work.
Yeah.
Did anyone else hear that I maybe no truth to it, that the Baptist is on the market?
Ooh,
What? The church,
No.
the whole church?
did not hear that.
I heard that. I don't know how reliable it was, but
From a real estate professional?
someone, I don't recall exactly who it was. I think it was a real estate professional, but I wouldn't swear to that.
Well, I will work my back channels and find out what's going on.
You'll have to call your brother. Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
yeah, pretty much. I'm gonna call Bill.
Does anyone know who bought Hillcrest Gardens?
Dorenzo Company's got their stuff park there. I don't know if that-
So
I
they're
don't know.
developers, right?
Yeah, I don't know if that means anything. And there is a parade this year as a member of the Exchange Club. I'll give you a public service announcement while I have the time here. No fireworks, but there is a parade on Monday, the 5th.
You would think with all the promoting that we've been doing that people would get that we're not having fireworks, but as a
Yeah.
park and recreation official that gets a lot of those phone calls every year that's like, what time do the fireworks start? There's a number of people that don't realize we're not having fireworks still.
Tell them they start in 2022.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that, Kristen.
Always. And yeah, so usually Cindy is on the, Cindy as
Yeah.
chair is on Exchange. So we usually get the info and I usually put it out there, but I'm glad to spread the joy, but
Yeah.
like what time is dusk? It's a great time. It's a great time.
Are people calling from outside this town? Is that why they
Everywhere.
don't know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've got a lot of calls anyway, so it's usually like, how do I reserve space at the Jewel? And by the way, do you know if they're doing fireworks this year?
Hmm.
So
Well,
it's
I
a
knew
hot
the
question.
answer to one of those.
Bob, I heard there's a quiet zone for the parade as well.
Yeah, that's new this year, based on requests that we've had from families, with people in the family, either young or old, who are really sensitive to the real loud sounds. So that'll be near the end up on Webster at Thorpe Park, right by High Street. So that zone right there. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. We're kind of interested to see how it works.
Well, anybody who
Well-
wants to hear the sirens can go down by town.
Yeah,
It's a scaled back parade.
yeah.
I mean, originally we were just talking about police and fire. Bob, do you know if they've added more floats than that?
Yeah. I would say it's not small, not big. It's maybe a scaled down, but not exclusive to first responders. We will have music, and there will be some floats, and the smattering of dignitaries. And it's a little tough, though, I think, when it falls on the Sunday, Monday kind of thing. I think a lot of people go away and won't come back for Monday.
So for those of you who know them, you would know them if you're on town meeting. Ron and Lois Sokol are the grand marshals.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I have been asked to be their driver by our convertible coordinator.
Drive carefully.
Yeah,
Yeah. Do you have a convertible?
I do.
Good.
Yeah, I've been driving it in the parade for the last 4 or 5 years. Normally, I drive the club president, but this year we have two because we didn't get to drive them last year. So, I guess the other drivers don't know Ron and Lois, and I do know them a little, so I offered to be their driver. So it'll be fun.
Is that Peter trying to come back in?
There he is.
Let's tell Peter we figured everything out for Emery Grover already.
All right, can you,
So we can adjourn the meeting, really.
Yeah, Peter, we figured it all out.
okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Again, right now.
All right, I'm on a weird camera setup here. All right, looking down. At any rate, you're just gonna see the top of my head.
It
That's
looks
the best-
fine.
It's the best.
You're
I-
all right.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. All right, so everyone can hear me, right? I'm not frozen? Okay, I think I'm okay. All right. First of all, revisions to the Needham CPC plan. What I've done, now can you see me? I wonder if this is.
No, we can
You're
see you
fine.
fine, Peter.
You're
I'm
fine.
on my wife's,
The
I'm in my
camera's
wife's
fine.
office. That's why I'm not used to this gear.
You
All
look
right.
fine.
Okay, I've looked at our CPC plan. I've looked at a half dozen other CPC plans that are posted on the Community Preservation Alliance as a resource. And I don't think that ours is I don't think our plan is one of those things where we can tweak it. I think that we need some, I think we need, I don't know what I call major revisions, but we need revisions to basically each one of our needs in the 4 areas that CPC is primarily responsible for. So we need up-to-date data. So when we talk about recreation and resources needs under our CPC plan, we're relying on data that dates back to basically 2000. So the underlying facts to support what we want to do for expenditures that's outdated data. And then our goals within each one. Some of the plans are say fairly general things, but the kind of more modern approach is to be pretty specific. So when you talk about housing, you could say one of our housing goals is to is, as an example, is to use funds to, update and assist the redevelopment of our housing authority units. I mean, there's that kind of specificity that you go through in putting together your goals. I could circulate some of the other plans, but what became evident to me, the most recent one was done by Manchester, which was published in March of 2021. And it's really nice. But I realized that it was done by a consultant, came in, presumably looked at our various kinds of planning documents throughout the town, across all departments of the town, interviewed the CPC and other people, and and to come up with what our needs are and what are our expressed goals. So I think that I don't want us to decide this tonight, but I'm probably going to try and make the case to you that we should take a look at doing more significant revision and spending a little bit of our administrative money to do that by the hiring of a consultant, where we are actually, not any one of us in particular is doing the drafting, but we're interacting with a consultant who's doing the drafting on the things like what the needs are and then what are your goals, which I think is a more appropriate role for the committee. But that's kind of what my thinking is on that. But I want to talk to Cecilia about it a little bit. I want to talk to the powers that be, if you will, to get some input from them, and then probably present to you some ideas at our July 14th meeting about how to proceed. So that's kind of that's my initial thought. If you have any initial reaction to it, let's hear it. But obviously, it would be one of those issues where we'd have a further discussion about it and figure out how we go from there. Does that make sense to anyone? Does anyone object? Does anybody? Okay, all right. I'll put together some information for you to review by the 14th. And I was thinking of pulling some stuff out of the different plans that give you some examples of how other towns are approaching issues of resources, needs, goals. Okay. All right, that's my report on the CPC plan. Then we have our plan for implementing the Newari principles. And one thing that I think that we should what I wanted to discuss with you was get this kind of ball rolling. But I went back and I looked at the original documents that Kate sent to us, or our town manager. And the covering letter asks us as a committee to consider adopting the visions and principles, and which are two different things. There's a vision statement, and then the next document is a guiding principle, and then integrating these concepts into our plans, etc. So we have kind of a first step, which is, I think that we need to we need to formally consider and adopt those two documents. I don't know if we can do that tonight. I can do a screen share and put those up there. We could also consider just having that vote on July 14th when we have our new member from the planning board. And we can actually just do the other approach that I was going to have for tonight that I talked to Karis about, which was use this session as what she called a brainstorming session to try and get started on what we can do on the CPC in implementing the vision and the guiding principles and using that and integrating that into our work on CPC. So I am not in a position, I mean, I can, there are experts out there, and there's a lot of work being done throughout the town that we should rely on. So I want us to get ahead of this. I want us to do something about it. These are important principles to a lot of people in town. A lot of work has been done in connection with it. My sense is that there's a lot of support for this vision and these principles among this committee. And so I wanted to get rolling on the idea of what do we want to do as a committee in connection with the New RA vision and New RA principles. So I'm going to open up the floor for discussion. I guess first question is, do you want me to, I can do a screen share, I think, of
Be
the,
helpful, Peter.
That would be good.
okay, here we go. This is my first effort at doing this. If I fall down, I'm going to ask Kristen to help me. I've been disabled as host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay, so we don't have participant screen sharing, Cecilia?
I guess not.
Okay, well, wait, I can email this document to Kristen.
I think Cecilia, you should be able to allow
Hold
some.
on. There we go.
Yeah.
All right,
All right, now you should be able to. I had it slightly smaller, so I couldn't find the button.
okay, here we go. Oh, you're seeing, okay. Guess.
Would you like me to try to share, Peter?
Yes, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for prime time on that. Can you find it?
Can you see my screen? Or
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
do you also see my sportsman screen?
Now, so you have the first, which is this is our vision statement.
This is the vision statement, the new RA vision statement.
Now, your email.
We're
You
now,
lost it.
we're now
You
looking
lose
at
it.
your email.
Oh, good. Better?
There you
Great.
go.
That's good.
All right, so the two documents that we would adopt by resolution, it would be the first one, which is racial equity statement for the town of Needham. Okay. And you want to take a moment and I think you've all read this before, but we can take a moment and reread it quickly. All right, has everyone read it?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then let's go. So this is, as you can see, this is a vision statement. These are aspirational statements and aspirational goals, if you will. And then guiding principles, the next statement. Is really kind of, in my mind, kind of the first step in trying to effectuate those aspirational goals. We can look at those quickly, but I would say that two sub points that jumped out at me in terms of our work are paragraph 1, subparagraph A and E, as well as G.
Does everyone want me to move on to 2?
And, oh yeah, that's right. We have our next paragraph. Thank you.
to move on to the next page, Peter, or?
Sure. So now I'm a little unclear about how this fits in, because this seems to be a separate document from, I mean, it's certainly part of the initial publication by the town, by the select board, but it's, I don't know that it fits in as either the vision statement or guiding principles.
Well, Peter, these are more the action points. I mean, you've got the guiding principles, but this is more of an outline of, okay, now if we want to implement the principles, or if we want to run this board, or however we can use this board towards the guiding principles, here are practical ways to do that. I don't know, I've just read this again, and, as I told you earlier, we discussed this at the planning board meeting last night, and we adopted all 3 of these pages.
Okay.
Because this page is called the intentional practices page. We had quite a discussion about it last night. It probably lasted for more than an hour. I think that it's probably easier for the planning board to try to implement some of these things than it would be for this board, because this board is so narrow in its scope. The planning board, we're more of a really town-wide, we're called the planning board. How do we vision and how do we implement what we see for the town 5, 10, 20 years down the road? And, we form subcommittees, we form working groups. And so for the planning board, this is trying to be more inclusive in putting those together. Maybe try to be more inclusive in getting people to run for planning board. The only thing that I can think of here for this board would be to try to get appointments of a more diverse membership to this board coming from the appointing authorities.
Right. That's, you kind of, that was one of those key points that I wanted to make, and that's a good, yeah. Well, I think that we can have a discussion regarding these three pieces of paper, and with an eye towards adopting them. If we have we can entertain a motion to adopt them this evening. I think it fits within the 4 corners of the agenda. So
I make that motion.
I'm
Okay.
a friendly amendment.
yeah, we're gonna have it. Let's have a motion and okay. So there's a motion to adopt the visions and principles and as well as our vision guiding principles and
Action.
Intentional practices.
intentional practices. All right, so can we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Now, discussion, and then at this point, Mr. Germany wants to make an amendment. So I think we need to hear the motions to amend. For
I'm a little rusty on my parliamentary procedure. I'm not
Hey,
sure.
Paul's going to correct me if I got it wrong.
All right, I have a comment.
All right, we'll have discussion.
Yeah, discussion. Thank you. I'll add, similar to what Paul just said, at Design Review Board last night, we adopted all 3 pages as well, unanimously, after a shorter discussion than Planning Board perhaps, but we did take it up. And I would support this Penny's motion. My original comment was going to be, well, I'd like to have a full board here to do it together, but I'm not sure we're ever going to have a meeting where we're all here. So I will withdraw that part of my comment.
Okay. I don't mean to call on anybody, but Paul, you did volunteer that you had an hour-long or so discussion. Do you mind sharing with us some of the discussion points that could be relevant to this committee?
Well, it's hard to remember it because we didn't even get to it until about 10:15 at night.
Okay.
But a lot of the discussion actually focused on actually the word that was used multiple times was kumbaya. That, this is all well and good, and we adopted it, and it's kind of a kumbaya document. And how do we need to work on, the discussion was really focused on how can we work on having implementation of actually putting it into effect, having it really mean something. And we really couldn't reach any conclusions on that last night. It's very difficult to envision. I am trying to put together at least one working group to discuss making changes to the bylaws with regard to affordable housing, which is, I think, going to morph into housing in general, not just affordable housing. So in terms of putting together a working group, I think we're going to be trying to reach out to those groups that this statement is trying to encourage to get involved in the town governance, so that their voices will be heard, and try to put people on the working group. We're probably, I shouldn't say probably, I think it's public knowledge. Marty Jacobs is not planning to run for re-election next April. And so in the next 10 months, we may be looking to try to recruit somebody to run for his seat, who may make for a more inclusive board. We do have a new member of the planning board, Natasha Estrada, who I think she's Puerto Rican, so she fits within this. And she was and she's part of Nuwari, and has been working as part of Nuwari for the past year and a half. And so she actually made the presentation last night. So, we're getting there. It might be baby steps. But as I said, I'm having difficulty seeing where this board can do that, because we don't do working groups. We don't have that kind of, we don't have subcommittees, and we're all appointed. We're not elected. Maybe try to get, trying to get people in town who are interested in having a voice heard to step up and volunteer. And how do we communicate to those people to how they can get their names out there to say, yes, I'm interested in working on groups in town, so that they will be appointed to boards, or possibly just showing up at meetings and boards and having a voice heard. And I think the discussion focused around, we do have a public information officer in town, and trying to work with the public information officer, especially towards improving the websites. Definitely improving the planning board website for that, possibly improving the page for this committee. Just some thoughts that were thrown out there last night.
Okay. Can I offer, Penny? Go right ahead.
Just to follow up on what you're saying, Paul. There are so many interested groups in town now. I would say that At My Neighbor's Table and the Equal Justice Needham people, who are sort of melding into the progressive Needham group, those people are really interested in this issue. And so it might be a good idea to try to increase communication between us and them. Just a thought.
Yeah, Jean McKnight, who's going to be taking my seat, is part of Equal Justice Needham. And so she will.
I am too. and the At My Neighbor's Table.
Yeah.
And Progressive Needham.
So there are two voices who, I wouldn't be surprised if Jean is part of Progressive Needham, although I
She
haven't
is.
mentioned it, yeah.
She is.
So I actually was thinking that we, with respect to paragraph 1, subparagraph G, which says that the town will take proactive measures to support a more racially and economically diverse and inclusive population. I think that that goes right to a community. One of the goals that we could easily have in our revised CPA plan for our community housing goals, which is that we can consider, or one of our emphasis could be to fund projects that are going to result in a more racially and economically diverse and inclusive population. I mean, I think that we could be more specific about that, but I think that that paragraph jumped out at me as something that we can have as part of our CPA plan. But I agree with you, Paul, that it's not easy for us because we're a group that comes together by appointment from the select board and the moderator, but then from committees they're all elected officials. So in terms of leadership for this committee, it's a pretty narrow group of people that are available to populate this committee. But I think that we can do some work, as I said, in connection with our plan itself. There may be an opportunity for us to, we're essentially adjudicators here. And maybe we should be have the benefit of training, like implicit bias training, which can be pretty effective and eye-opening and useful. So that's one idea that I had in terms of just kind of brainstorming what we could look at and potentially do. I also think that we should, as a committee, we should definitely be looking back to planning board, park and rec, housing authority, the constituent groups that we represent, the stakeholders, and what are those committees doing, and have that information flow down to us. I think that that's going to be really important. Those are my thoughts. Anyone with further thoughts? Yes, Bob.
Yeah, thanks everybody for your thoughts. And Peter, I've been thinking about this sort of from two perspectives. One is like, how did we get here on this committee? So we're all appointed. So that seems to be sort of more of a town level or official level, whoever the appointing authorities are, they need to, have this discussion among them. So there's that. And the other perspective, those from within the committee, I think we always lament when we prepare and do our due diligence, and then we have our public hearings, that there's very few attendees. And maybe that's something we as a committee could talk about. Are there ways we can reach out, even on our own individually, every one of us, to get more people to listen in or tune in or come in or be aware of it? I think that is sort of inherently one of our jobs. I don't think it's written down anywhere necessarily, but I feel a responsibility that on this committee, we should let, especially the people who don't know about it. One of the problems I'm wrestling with here is that we're all the choir right now, sort of, with respect to CPC. We know how this committee works. We know what it does, but we serve a lot of people who don't. And how do we, I'm not going to force anybody, but give them the opportunity to learn. And especially ours, because we talk a lot about that we're, entrusted with the taxpayers' money. So I think it's incumbent upon us to try to reach as many as we can to say, hey, look, this is what's going on with, this year. These are the issues before us, or the applications before us. But some people have already mentioned these other groups we can tap into to let, more broadcasting about the public hearing and let me back up for a second too. Just like I say public hearing, I know what that is. You all know what that is, but there's probably people in town who don't even know what that is, quite literally. And what does it mean? They probably think, well, I'm not on the committee, I can't go. And I think So that's a townwide effort from starting with Kate Fitzpatrick, and especially, as Paul mentioned, our public information officer. I think it'd be wonderful if every committee reached out to the PIO and said, look, this is how you can help us. And there was quite a robust discussion, I might say, at town meeting about the role of the PIO. So I think maybe that's, something we can do. So those are kind of my thoughts right now. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments or questions? And that now we're actually just entertaining the resolution, passing our three documents. Comments, questions, further discussion. So I think what we should do, just like in closing, is I think that we don't want to pass this and then put it on the side of the desk. So I think that we need to commit to doing some work on it, and work on it as we go along. Hopefully the committees that you each represent will be pushing the issue on your side, and that information will be coming down to us. I've identified one way that we can make an impact and effectuate some of these guiding principles through our revised community preservation plan. So we can explore that as in the months to come. Those are my closing comments. So we will have any further discussion. Hearing none, let's have a vote. It must be a roll call vote. And we'll start with Joe Barnes.
Aye.
Okay. Paul Alpert.
Aye.
Bob Dermody.
Yes.
Penny Kirk.
Aye.
Rick Zimbo.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, so it's unanimous. Okay. So that brings us to the Emery Grover update. And I don't want to put you on the spot, Rick, but if you want to start by bringing the update, or if you want me to start, we can do either one.
I don't mind, Peter. The capital planning committee went through, we were invited to the meeting, and they went through a document that was, well, even before they went through the document, they talked about the school planning and the school department's planning, and how it fit in with the rest of the capital planning. And they had a presentation by Doran Whittier as to a number of options to proceed. Some of them, all of them involved the schools from, and the focus was on Pollard and Mitchell. And Doran Whittier had a number of scenarios that they put forth, some of which involved MSBA funding. Some of them did not, just because they didn't think they would be able to get funding in a particular fashion or priority. One of the things that was brought up was, even though there's an interest in doing some work down in Pollard, there was an indication that the state views the Mitchell School as the school of highest need. They talked about a number of different alternatives, including making Hillside an elementary school, moving the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to an expanded Pollard, where 6th would be a separate building, and it would eliminate the trailers that are there. They talked about a number of different things, of which Peter and I really weren't too interested in, other than just our own curiosity. One of the interesting parts is they talked about a bunch of capital projects in town, and this kind of leads up to the financial model. One that I wasn't aware of, but apparently there's a major project for a new DPW complex, and that project is pretty significant in price, and that's going to be the project that competes against the funding of the capital funding we're looking at for the schools, and also for Emery Grover. So they went through that, they talked about that a little bit. And then Dave Davidson spent quite a bit of time walking through his financial model that he's developed. It was from what I understand, and we didn't go through every page, but it was 110 pages, spreadsheets that he had pulled together, looking at various scenarios, at various, he focused on two specific options that Doran Whittier had put together. And he did a rollout of, where we've been, what we've spent money on, what's committed, where's the debt look. And then he did a whole bunch of sensitivities on the amount of debt, what percentage, how it would roll out, what does it look like going forward from those projects that are already committed to those that they're talking about implementing. He talked about funding within the levy, within the normal tax levy. He also talked about the need for some overrides and where that comes into play. And he ran a whole bunch of scenarios, at least initially, to take a look at where we exceeded the thresholds that have always been in place. 3% threshold for the borrowing in the levy and 10% overall. We do, under whatever scenario he looks at, we exceed both of those at some point in time going forward. That's from a townwide perspective. Interestingly enough, and Peter and I commented about this after and during the meeting, what he did is he assumed our contribution to be fixed, that we weren't going to, for the purpose of his model, that our contribution to the Emery Grover building was going to be $6 million. He didn't vary that. He didn't put more in. It's almost like when we declared $6 million last year, that became a fixed point in the model. So there's going to be more studies and more analysis, and that doesn't necessarily mean, at least when Peter and I talked afterwards, doesn't necessarily mean they won't come back to us looking for additional funding. But it appeared that they've held that $6 million, and they've ran all these studies and assessments off of the $6 million. Now, after he ran through all this, he then ran sensitivities on the interest rates, on various funding, the timing, so on and so forth, how much free cash will be available and can be used towards this. So that he spent a lot of time. It was extremely impressive, the work he did. But as far as we're concerned, he really just kind of, other than the projects we still are funding with debt, he just put $6 million in for Emery Grover. And so Peter, you might have to, I got the impression that they weren't going to come looking for design money from us. That was, they're going to look for the $6 million towards the actual capital construction. That I think that they decided not to come looking for us to contribute the design funds. At least that's what I get out of it. So I'm not sure if you came to the same conclusion as I did.
Oh, so that would make things a little easier for them too, because they wouldn't be coming to us out of cycle. So there wouldn't be a question of why are you funding a CPC project out of cycle. They could go general, they could just go to town meeting in October and ask for the funds that way.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's just one last question that they don't need to answer, especially if they know that they have a kind of a commitment from us that we're going to fund $6 million total. It doesn't matter which way, where it comes in, whether it's design or design and then construction. That makes a lot of sense. But I guess I didn't really consider that. I guess that does make sense. So
yeah, the other thing is there's going to be a follow-up meeting. I wrote it in my calendar. I don't remember what it is, sometime in July. And there's a number of questions being posed by the various parties, most notably some of the people in the finance committee, wanting to continue to go and revisit the idea of Emery Grover where it is versus some other alternative. They also they had some other questions on some of the assumptions in the Dorr Whittier analysis that they want some additional data and information on. So these discussions are going to continue. And it seems like they're having one a month until they get to September. And hopefully by that point, they'll have made a decision on which way they're going to go. Pretty much cover it.
Yeah, I think that does cover it. I think that the point to hold on to is that he's basically, there are a lot of moving parts with his presentation and the models that he was building. And he chose to keep the flag that we put in the ground as a part that's fixed. So that's interesting. There's some other, there's some other scenarios where I could see the town might want to ask for additional funds, but I don't think we need to deal with that now. So because there are plenty of other resources, financial resources available to bring what we call the 3% within the levy, the 3% borrowing within the levy down, including the kind of the stabilization fund that we have in place. He made a specific reference to that, which is designed actually to be used when we're having during short periods of time when we're actually servicing a lot of debt and we're going above the 3%. Right? Is that a fair way to describe it, Rick?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
we'll see. He made a specific reference to that. Yes, Paul.
So specific to what goes on with this committee, are they keeping Emery Grover on a fast track? Are they looking to have town meeting vote the design funds in October and hopefully deal with construction funding in May?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, that's the plan, Paul. And
Yeah.
they indicated that they were probably going to pay for the design funds out of free cash. Dave indicated that there was a significant amount of free cash in town for this fall, and that that's how they're going to look to pay for that.
Okay.
Mr.
Yes, Joe.
So is it fair to say that the Emery Grover project is going to trump either of the two schools? It's going to be first and foremost on the list for funding prior to even looking at Mitchell, or are they parallel types of projects? Based on what
I
you
would say they're parallel, Peter.
Yeah, they had timelines, but the one we were focusing on, or the one thing that you ended up focusing on was the timeline of putting together the two schools, which are going to end up being sequentially done over a 14-year period. So I think that Emery Grover is operating at its own point,
okay,
on its own track, because the reason that they're doing it back to back is because of the state the state construction reimbursement, whatever we call that.
MSBA funding.
There you go. Right.
Yeah,
So,
what I found interesting, Peter, is the whole discussion. There wasn't much discussion about the DPW building or complex. And just, a cursory look at Dave's financial analysis indicates that if they postponed the DPW, then some of the pressure on these 3%, 10% limits would be abated. So I'm sure there's going to be discussion about the prioritization of these capital projects in town, particularly the big ones, which is the DPW complex, Mitchell, the middle school, and Emery Grover.
okay. So our next meeting is going to be actually prior to the next meeting of this joint committee. So we probably will not have an update for you, but we will have had an opportunity to review the documents that were circulated at our meeting last week. So we may be able to add some insight. And if we pull out some insight, if that comes to us, we'll provide you with that additional information at our next meeting. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I don't know if you heard me earlier, but I have to leave at 8.
Okay. Let's see. Well, it's 8 now, Penny.
I know.
All right. So I'm not ready to adjourn yet, but that's okay. But if you're leaving now, I understand. Is that okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, before you leave, are you okay with our schedule of July 14th and August 25th?
I'm not sure about August. I'm going to be away, but July 14th, yes.
Okay. And are you okay with meeting by Zoom for the balance of the summer? Is
Absolutely.
that a
Yep.
preference for you?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, good. All right, signing off. Thanks, Penny.
Bye.
Okay, so that leads to, let me just confirm that. With our future meeting dates, we have them down to tentatively as July 14th and August 25th. Bob Dermody.
Comment on Emery Grover, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah, just and this is something I ask often of how, the relationship between the town and the CPC and monies requested and amounts. So I'd like just to get my colleagues' thoughts here. How do we feel about 6 million now being set, maybe not in stone, but certainly in masonry so far? Are we okay with that? Will we have a say eventually still, do we think? I mean, yes, we will, but I just get concerned that they bank on something which is not always fully disclosed how it was determined. I guess it was determined because we gave them that indication, but can we change that number if we want to?
Well, I guess the answer is sure.
Great. That's all I needed to hear. Thanks.
But whenever I had discussions with anyone on the committee about the Emery Grover money, it's, well, we are a funding source. We do have constituent groups that we have to, that we're supposed to satisfy. And if we don't spend the money, and we're supposed to spend the money, it's taxpayer money. So, there was, I know the answer is yes, we can change our mind, but I will point out to you that when we did a sense of the committee, there was a pretty solid kind of, it wasn't a vote, but a pretty solid landing spot around 6 million with.
All right. I just want to be on record again that I want to give them more.
Oh. Okay.
No, I'm serious.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I want to save that building, and if it takes more money, I want to spend it.
Okay.
As long as you have it.
Okay. That's good. All right. And I think
We get all the money we get.
Okay. I didn't understand where you were going with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, good. All right. Paul. Yes, Paul.
So my recollection is that we got to the 6 million by saying that we were willing to fund roughly 25% of the total cost of the building, which was represented to us as being in roughly the $24 million range, give or take. So I don't want to lose, well, I'm not going to be on this, on this committee going forward, but it's, can it go higher? Can it go lower? I'd like the committee to remember that we're looking at that 25% number. And as the cost of the project goes up or comes down, perhaps we want to revise the 6 million to reflect staying within roughly 25% of the cost of the project. Now, Bob wants to fund more, higher percentage, higher dollar number, that's for future discussions. It's really, once we have the application in front of us, that's, when the hard number comes in. Yes, it should be a soft number at this point, and it is a soft number.
But I think that what you're hinting at, though, is a good idea, a good point, which is that we should be, we should have some principles, some basis for coming up with that money. And so it's like, well, we feel that, 25%. Now, I guess what's the open question in my mind is, Is that what we're gonna say about all of these historic preservation, big ticket buildings?
No,
If you remember the discussion in the past, we talked about how much room we had, because we have a debt limit as well. And that was kind of, I mean, if we had gone with their original request for 12 million or whatever it was, we far exceeded our debt limit. And that's when we get into a discussion about, well, what is a debt limit that we would be comfortable with? And that's how we arrived at the 6 million. One of the concerns that I have going forward, and it's going to be part of the next discussion from what I understand, is as everybody knows, the cost of material and construction is skyrocketing. And that's going to have a material impact on any estimates that they provide for the Emery Grover building, particularly, since it's now been delayed a little bit. And also the cost of materials and construction, labor market's high. So I'm not so sure that 24 million, which is what we originally talked about, is going to hold. I think that number is going to go up, and it might go up substantially.
Good point, Rick.
Okay. All right, so now where does that leave us?
In
Well,
the,
that leaves us, yeah, that's,
well, we're in a waiting pattern until we get an application again, right?
Okay.
exactly,
All
exactly.
right.
But I think this is a good discussion to have these, arguments or what have you of, and having been through it once, I think helps us. We sort of have hashed out a lot of the issues, and it comes down to really good points by our colleagues here about, where we're comfortable, how does it affect other projects we might want to fund as a committee or we feel responsible to fund, that kind of thing. So those are
The other point is that there's been a lot of discussion about project applications coming from third parties, not necessarily from Park and Rec, not necessarily from the town, that there may be project applications that come to us from a third party. And I'm not even talking about churches. I'm just talking about groups get together and they want to fund a particular project. It may fall within Park and Rec's jurisdiction, or it may fall within the town's jurisdiction, but that's where we get into the plan. And it also gets into how some of these constituent groups may decide that they want to put an article in front of us for us to consider. And I think that's where, some of these guiding principles we all just signed off on is going to create some, I keep reading Lakshmi's blog there, and she talks about putting porta potties at every field in town. I think that's probably going to fall within our jurisdiction at some point, but maybe not.
Okay.
And Peter, you had mentioned other potential preservation projects, and I am not aware of other town-owned historic buildings currently. Although, as Rick mentioned, one could come out of the blue from a private group or club that happens to own something that's historic. I'm not aware of it, but so that's something to keep in mind.
Okay.
Can I ask, Rick, you were referring to third parties making application. Would addressing something like that come under what Peter was referring to earlier in the meeting about updating our plan and being more specific? Okay, being more specific as to who can, who can't, and how we react. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And I think that we have to be more open about where these applications come. That's just my opinion, is where these applications come from. It's got to be coordinated at some point through the town body somewhere, but
Yes, Paul.
Yeah, so that's where we get back to the Nuwari principles, where perhaps this committee wants to look at being more proactive in getting the word out to more racially and ethnically diverse groups in town, or constituencies in town, to say, hey, don't forget that there's a community preservation committee that has funds available if you fit within these categories. And if you've got a project that fits within one of our categories, you might be able to qualify for funding through us. You know, these are organizations that may not know that we're available to them for funding, and perhaps under the Nuwari principles and initiatives, this committee should be more proactive in getting the word out to them. Thought I'd
Yep.
put that out there.
Paul, just a comment, I agree with you. We just got to be very careful though, because we have to fall within the CPC guidelines as to what
Right.
we can fund, you know, so.
Yeah, but you don't know,
Right.
you don't know if something qualifies until they bring it in front of us.
Exactly.
All right, well, that's good. Let's just talk about our future meetings, July 14th and August 25th. Do those work for everybody? And what I was going to propose was maybe might be easiest if we just, because everyone's in different places, you may be, you know, Gene McKnight is going to be on the Cape on August 25th, but is available to participate. You know, she said she's got good internet reception where she's going to be. So
She might be on the Cape on July 14th also, but you know, if it's by Zoom, Gene's available for both of those dates. As
Yeah.
per our direction.
I think it would facilitate the best participation by as many committee members as we have if we stayed with Zoom through the summer. Does anybody feel strongly one way or the other about that?
Zoom for the summer, please.
Okay, Zoom for the summer. Anyone against Zoom?
I
Okay.
don't think our discussions have suffered at all by being on Zoom versus in the flesh at the Highland Room. I think once the applications start to come in and we need people to make presentations or we need further discussion, then being together live makes more sense. I think we can do all of our business right now Zoom. I like what we're doing.
Thanks, Joe.
I agree. Has there been any direction as far as how you would do a mixed meeting, partial Zoom, partial in person?
Cecilia may have some insight in that. I think that we have some technology available in town hall to do that. Is that right, Cecilia?
Yeah, I know the select board chambers, I believe, is set up, and I know that we're working on getting that set up for hopefully the fall for that purpose in particular.
I would suggest we either do all Zoom or all in person. Having tried to teach hybrid last year, it's doable, but it's difficult.
All
And
right.
you chew up a lot of time on solving technical issues, just FYI.
Okay.
All right. I have a hard enough time keeping everything balanced here. I would not be a hybrid model teacher. I would not be a good candidate for hybrid model teaching.
And Peter, you had asked about availability. I will probably make 50% of the next two meetings.
Do you want to share which one? And is it going to be 50% of each of the next two or 50% of the?
No, I'll be at one of them in its entirety, but I don't know which one yet.
Okay.
That's all I can tell you at this point.
Okay. Okay, better keep that under wraps.
Yeah, pretty much. Notice I might have a screensaver tonight.
Okay. All right. Okay, so with that, I think that's are there any other issues? No. Okay. This is Paul Alpert's last meeting with us on the Community Preservation Committee. And Paul has served a total of 2 3-year terms, 6 years. And I'll speak for myself, but I think I can say this on behalf of the committee. You've been a fantastic member of the committee. For me personally, although committee members may not know this, you know, you and I have spent you've given me much time during your professional hours, helping me through issues, giving me some advice that I've asked for. You've been really
Sometimes giving you advice that you haven't asked for.
advice that I haven't asked for.
It's
And
the
it's
same
just
price, right?
been a real joy to have you around. I've learned a lot from you. So for me personally, I'm very thankful that you've been on the board and been on the committee. But I've also think that your participation has just been great. I want to point out to the committee things that you probably already know, that Paul's active in his temple. He is also, of course, the incoming chair for the planning board. So that's a small board, relatively speaking, with a big lift. They have a lot of work. He started out, I think he's been a long time town meeting member. And one of the things that stood out to me was back when I first joined town meeting, Paul was a member. When he spoke, people listened. And that holds true back 13 years ago when I first joined town meeting to the present. It was particularly representative in our last town meeting when we were dealing with our zoning amendment. That could have been that was pretty hotly disputed, if you will. But I thought that, I don't know if any of you made this observation, but for me, I thought that Paul's sincerity and that his credibility, the bona fides that he had built up over the years with each and every member of town meeting, really came through. And he handled what could have been a really contentious, potentially really divisive article, handled it with a lot of respect for people who could potentially oppose it, a lot of empathy towards people who had some concerns about it. And all that sincerity really came through. And I was just so impressed. And I thought that was just one of the greatest examples of how you participate as a citizen in your local government. So you get one official virtual Attaboy award, the first award of the first. Here it is. It's this.
Thank you.
Job well done. And what's great is you're just rotating off of this board, but then now you get to be chair of the planning board. And so we get to hear you, if we're town meeting members, and as CPC members who aren't town meeting members, we get to hear you as chair of the planning board in our upcoming town meetings. So Paul, I'm going to continue to call you up, get advice from you, and find out what I'm really actually supposed to be doing. And but thank you so much, really, on behalf of the committee. Really, thank you so much. You've done a great job, and I'm looking forward to all the hard work that you're going to be doing on the planning board as chair.
Thank you, Paul.
Yep. Thanks again, Paul.
Thank you.
Paul, you may recall the very first committee I was ever on in the town of Needham, I served on a committee with Paul Alpert. And it taught me, it was the land use committee for the Volanti parcel behind Newman
Oh, wow.
in the spring of 2010.
Yeah.
So, so I watched Paul in that committee and I said, hey, this looks like fun and some cool, smart people. And I said, I'm going to stick around. So
Yeah.
thank you, Paul.
So Peter, by all means, call me anytime. I enjoy our conversations, whether they're just CPC related or otherwise. I know your office is in Cambridge and I'm in Boston, but once we get through COVID, we have to get together and, have lunch or have a drink or have both.
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay.
Good.
Okay. Thank you again. All right, so with that, we're going to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, the motion was made by Zambone, seconded by Dermody, and we will have our roll call vote in roughly alphabetical order. Alpert,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Dermody,
Aye.
Zambone,
Aye.
and the chair, Pingator, votes aye.
Thank you, Kristen and Cecilia. As
Yeah,
always.
thank you.
Thank you both.
Always, thank
Well
you.
done. Well done.
Yep.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Enjoy the summer.
All right.
See you on the 14th or the
See you on the
25th.
14th.
I hope to see you
13th.
guys